the determination of this government to honor its pledge of renewal to the nation. Madam Speaker, I had occasion in the last few months to address the House on the appalling dilapidation of our institutions and the pillars of governance of our country. This was not accidental or advantageous. The nation at large has taken cognizance of the catastrophic state of our economy, brought on by years of reckless decisions, deliberate sabotage of those perceived to have an adverse political affiliation to the previous government. And it resulted in hundreds of millions of US dollars in costly awards and judgments against the state. Equally alarming is the nefarious legacy of drug addiction. Drug addiction, drug trafficking, and other drug-related crimes that the previous government has bequeathed us. The previous government failed dismally to combat the escalation of the drug crisis in Mauritius. It almost appears, I'm tempted to say appears, to have been deliberately delayed action to tackle drug trafficking, drug addiction, and halt the proliferation of drug-related crimes. As a responsible government, we are duty-bound to do away with the previous regime's toxic legacy arising from years of ineptitude, indifference, and the obvious nexus between the drug barons and the MSM. And Madam Speaker, an American journalist, David Sheiberg, had written in an issue of Newsweek about the deadly dangers of drug proliferation. I want to quote him because it says exactly what we are saying. It says, and I quote, "The largest, richest, and deadliest criminal enterprise in history is penetrating deeply into civil structures that make democracy what it is. Justice systems, police forces, political parties, legislatures, electoral campaigns, government ministries, and presidential palaces." This, Madam Speaker, rings a very uncomfortable, it is recognizable, this bell, with all those who have observed with growing dismay the conduct of the previous government and the disconcerting admission of the previous Prime Minister, who said that, he admitted, the drug mafia has infiltrated all our institutions. Prime Minister saying that after nearly 10 years in power. Of course, we are familiar with that type of behavior from the party that brought us so many infamous and shameful moments. Let me just recall the highlights of that tawdry, I think we could call it cinema. The House may recall how in 1985, a bunch of notorious drug traffickers was invited officially to the garden party at Rodrigues for independence celebration, where they lighted firecrackers and were shouting, "Gouvernement donne la main, nous pouvons faire ce que nous voulons." It seems a new breed of traffickers still considered, until they were booted out, that Gouvernement donne la main, and it was during the lost and wasted decade of the MSM-led government. Then there were the episode of the Amsterdam boys, 4 MPs traveling with diplomatic passports. And Madam Speaker, believe it or not, those passports were given on a Saturday morning. The PMO was open for them. With instruction to open the PMO and give them these diplomatic passports because they had to have diplomatic immunity. As you know, Madam Speaker, as we all know, they were arrested in December 1985 in possession of 20 kilograms of heroin worth 36 million rupees at the time. And I bet you, had they not been arrested in Amsterdam, they would have walked in here with red carpet treatment. That is what the previous government did. That is the mentality. In 2000, and who can forget the hilarious and yet very serious incident when an exhibit of heroin in the custody of the police. When it was brought to court, it turned out to be la mouche chinoise. You can see the nexus. There has been cooperation right across the board. In 2017, one Viren Pirumal, a notorious drug trafficker, some people call him the Godfather, he deposed at the Commission of Inquiry on Drug Trafficking, chaired by former Judge Lam Shanling. He explained the modality of his contribution. At the time, he said 30 million rupees he spent to finance the electoral campaign of the MSM in 2014. 30 million. One drug trafficker. The Commission of Inquiry heard from the drug trafficker, Viren Pirumal, that he kept his representation in-house. You can understand what that means. A closed circuit. All were members of the party of the government then. According to him and another dealer, one Siddiq Islam, even informed the commission that they paid their counsel, believe it or not, with drug money, and counsel accepted. This is how the MSM operated. In 2018, the Commission of Inquiry also referred, and I'm quoting, to very disturbing facts concerning one barrister at law representing Mr. Perumal, and close to the previous government, who at the time occupied important positions. The Commission report underscores, and it says, I quote, those controlling the casinos, the gambling houses, horse racing, where the Commission has reason to believe, in the light of the various testimonies it received, they are the temples of money laundering, but the accomplices of the drug traffickers, and it is a matter of concern. The Commission of Inquiry, Madam Speaker, expressed scathing criticism of the activities of certain barristers at law, as going far beyond ethical, professional, and legal constraints in the representation of notorious drug traffickers engaging in the conduct amounting to an attempt to pervert the court of justice. Do you really believe this? Barristers perverting the court of justice? The Commission of Inquiry mentions how a lady minister of the government, Honorable Mrs. Rubina Jadou John Bakas, had visited 17 detainees in less than 3 hours and without being solicited. She came, voluntarily, as if. On another occasion, she visited 15 detainees and groups of detainees. Thereby, the Commission says, when you have a group of detainees together, they're all accused of drug dealing. You bring them together. You're facilitating the exchange of information between them. A barrister doing this. It was also established that she had been in communication with the most notorious convicted drug trafficker, again this Mr. Viren Pirumal. That is why they all shouted the name, the pet name, Kala Prison. That is the name. Another one, Jiva, and one Botswa, explained how they had been enticed not to implicate certain persons and to dévier l'enquête. They're very strong at that. You're seeing the FCC arresting people. There are going to be attempts to dévier l'enquête. But I tell them, those who want to do this, think again. We have the response to them. In 2017, Madam Speaker, a record seizure of heroin made the headlines. 119.5 kilograms of heroin, worth 1.8 billion rupees, was found on board of a ship among imports from a company called Brilliant Resource Consulting Limited, owned by whom? By one Jia-Chan Devdani. His proximity with the leader of the MSM is well known. At first, I didn't know him. And Devdani responded, ask him who used to put Brazil. Camaro dans le frigidaire. Bread sauce. And what happened afterwards, Madam Speaker, is shocking. He's arrested. The Prime Minister said he doesn't know him. Then he made these remarks, and then, believe it or not, by magic, the provisional charges were dropped. completely dropped, as if nothing happened. Encore une fois, l'enquête indébirée. Equally shocking, in 2019, 95 kilos of cocaine, estimated at one, they don't talk about millions, these people, billions, 1.4 billion rupees, hidden in a tractor bed. It escaped the control of the custom officers at the port, despite the fact the port was fully equipped with modern equipment and sniffing dogs to detect drugs. No, it went through. What is even more striking is that the cocaine traveled alongside Mauritius. That is the first metro tram which reached Mauritius. And believe it or not, the tram came up. Who was there? The whole cabinet with the Prime Minister welcoming everybody. The tram has come. And the tram has come with drugs right in front of the nose. And you know, Madam Speaker, nobody up to now has been arrested. Nobody. As usual, l'enquête dévirée. We know, Madam Speaker, that regrettably, cocaine is used as a recreational drug of some of the most affluent classes in our country. But the law cannot apply and does not apply to only one class of persons. As I said in the recent passing out ceremony for police constables, and I quote again, we cannot allow unruly elements who may have thought they are above the law to threaten the very fabric of our society. No one is above the law. I'm tempted to quote this great judge who became master of the rolls, Lord Denny. This is what he said: to every citizen of this land, however powerful, I would use Thomas Fuller's words over 300 years ago, be ne'er so high, the law is still above you. Madam Speaker, while the Labour government has invested to transform Grand Bassin into Gangatalao, to transform it into a peaceful spiritual sanctuary, some were busy transforming an area very close to Gangatalao into a narco sanctuary. That's what they did. The previous government, under the very suspicious conditions, granted a lease to Eco Deer Park. It was found out subsequently that the land had been converted into a fancy rave party, where stag party, cochon marron, drugs, alcoholic drinks were available at gogo. And at least one previous minister, probably two, I'm told, were there. And no less a person than the former Attorney General of this country. This is the level we had reached. The case is being investigated just now by the FCC, so I won't make more comments. And then, Madam Speaker, who has not heard of Hubert Célerine, better known as Franklin, notorious roi de l'Ouest, who was actively involved in many questionable activities perpetrated with the apparent blessing of the political masters of the day. He was even allowed to occupy state land in this salubrious land at Rivière-Noire. And when there were civil requests for his extradition from Réunion Island, where he had been already sentenced to imprisonment, he didn't want to go into prison. So what did they do? They protect him. The then government deliberately tried to prevent his extradition. So many times, the Attorney General the then Attorney General was answering questions here, looking for little change in the phrases to say that they're looking into it, they're looking in. As usual, with the MSM, they're always looking into it. When he was finally extradited, why? Because of public outcry and the then opposition. What happened? He was given VVIP treatment, enjoying the comfort of business class. See, this is how drug barons were treated by the former regime. It begs the question, Madam Speaker, is it sheer coincidence that each time the MSM has been in power, each time we saw a prolific resurgence of drug traffickers in the country? Is it a coincidence? We sing the same saga since 1985. And after 10 years, we've just seen, we have to see, everybody knows, le ravage et le tort que la drogue est en train de faire à notre jeunesse. This is the legacy of the MSN. This is the legacy. We have stated in no uncertain terms in the government program that the fight against drug trafficking and use will be one of the main priorities of the government. We have no choice. Every government has to defend the citizens of the country. We will implement bold measures to end the suffering of families with an unflinching resolve to deal with this major societal scourge. It is important, Madam Speaker, to make a distinction between the victim of drug abuse and the trafficker. In this respect, let me remind the House what the late Sir Maurice Rowe said way back in 1986 in his report of the Commission of Inquiry on Drugs, which he chaired. He said, addiction is the modern form of slavery. The addict is chained to the trafficker by bonds as cruel as those who tied the slave to his load. And he runs the same risk of moral defilement since he cannot disobey his master, and he can be compelled to cheat, to steal, or even sell his body. That's what he said in his report. Madam Speaker, the National Agency for Drug Control, this bill, represents a crucial step in fulfilling our commitment to fight against this blight, which is posing a significant threat to the health, security, and future of our nation. It has taken the proportion of as if a serious epidemic. Today, we present not just a legal framework, but a vision for a safer Mauritius free from the devastating impact of this deadly threat. For the first time in the country, Madam Speaker, we are proposing a fully integrated strategy actionable by an agency that will bring together all the various public bodies involved in it, all under one roof, to combat drug trafficking, provide rehabilitation, and support families of the victims of drug abuse. The legal provisions in respect of trafficking, consumption, and treatment of drug addicts will be reviewed to cater entirely for differentiated treatment of traffickers and consumers. I remember, Madam Speaker, I was invited by the former President of the United States, President Clinton, at the Clinton Global Initiative. And during dinner, he asked me, are you using methadone in your country for treatment? I had to say no. I can't say I was aware of it either, but I said no. And he said it is one decision that he regretted when he was president. He regretted that he never used methadone. And he immediately made funds available for antiretroviral drugs for HIV patients and earmarked part of it for the provision of methadone. We received in all $36,270 US. And what happened when we lost the election in 2014? The previous minister said, methadone, not necessary. He stopped methadone. There was a prominent professor in La Réunion, gave an interview, I think in Express, but I'm not sure, when he said it is a huge mistake to stop methadone. And what happened? He had to backtrack and they restarted methadone afterwards. Trial and error. No scientific purpose in what they're doing. They just try this, try that. Because the previous government did this, stop it. And then they have to backtrack. The measures we are proposing to the House today, Madam Speaker, evince the determination of this government to address the multifarious challenges posed by drug abuse. Every day we witness disastrous consequences on families. We see how families, without distinction of class or community, they're totally shattered. How the healthcare system is having difficulties in coping with this problem and how drug-related crimes are increasing. This is threatening our youth. Indeed, they are the future of our nation. The future of our nation is being threatened. Over recent years, Madam Speaker, no significant, effective, and tangible measures have been taken to combat this crisis. It is abundantly clear that there was no genuine will to remedy the situation by the previous government. We all know how the conclusions and recommendations of the Commission of Inquiry on Drugs were mostly ignored, just a few here and there. The situation continued to deteriorate under the complacent or complicit watch. The previous government dismantled Natresa and did not replace it with any alternative to carry out the important work of harm reduction. Nothing. Yet it is clear that the traditional approach to dealing with such a complex problem with wide-ranging ramifications is totally outdated today. The World Drug Report of 2023, Madam Speaker, warned of a proliferation of supply, demand, and use of synthetic drugs, as well as an increase in substance use disorders. The number of people using drugs has increased by 11% globally, but by as much as 40% in Africa in 2023. In response to the growing threats posed by synthetic drugs, the United States launched the Global Coalition to Address Synthetic Drugs Threats, aimed at accelerating the international efforts to tackle this rising crisis. As part of the Global Coalition Initiative, the government of the United States provided funding to the UN ODC to conduct a detailed assessment of the threats posed by synthetic drugs. This project also evaluated the national and regional capacities of 6 East African countries. That included Mauritius. And look what the report says. It's not finalized yet, but we have part of it. As part of the assessment, in July of 2024, the UNODC conducted a study on synthetic drugs, especially in Mauritius. And among the main findings, and I quote, Mauritius has been identified as the leading user of synthetic cannabinoids. Leading user. The other findings include, they made comments, drug rehabilitation efforts within the public sector remain severely limited. Although methadone treatment is now available, other forms of treatment remain underdeveloped and inadequate. Psychological support and interventions, including traditional medicine where available, need further strengthening. In fact, they were not using anything. And with limited resources and insufficient follow-up, many individuals either fail to comply or become in relapse after finishing the treatment. Madam Speaker, the threat posed by synthetic cannabinoids and other drugs in Mauritius have already been highlighted in the Globalized Organized Crime Index of 2023, which measured actually 15 criminal markets, including drug markets, across 193 member states. And guess what? Guess what? Mauritius ranked out of the 193, 7th in regard to synthetic drugs, 7th, just behind South Africa. However, in spite of Mauritius forming part of the US Global Coalition since November 2023, the previous government just allowed the situation to worsen. They couldn't care less. It failed to realize the benefits. There were benefits and resources available for the coalition to strengthen the country's response, but they did nothing. This laxism amounts to gross negligence. I would say criminal negligence, coupled with the obvious proximity of notorious traffickers with the previous regime. They have contributed greatly to the quagmire we find ourselves today. I think, I'm not mincing my words, it is a tantamount to the betrayal, to a betrayal of the whole nation of this country. We cannot and will not continue to pay lip service to the challenges related to national security, including those relating to drug trafficking. We know, Madam Speaker, most of the drugs available in Mauritius, from the reports we see from ATSU and all this, that most of it come from the sea. It is a fact that we can, not all, but most. It is a fact that we cannot deal with the drug problem in isolation. We cannot. We are partners through the Indian Ocean Commission. with countries of the Indian Ocean for sharing of information and joint patrolling of our respective maritime zone. The actual Commissioner of Police was at ATSU. He was cooperating fully. We're getting advanced information, even, I said mostly from the sea, but even on planes. Information was shared. Here it seems with the MSM, not interested to share information. The Regional Maritime Information Fusion Center in Madagascar is responsible for producing a single recognized maritime picture of Western Indian Ocean and identifying vessels of interest. The Regional Operations Center in Seychelles is dedicated to the coordination of the regional operations at sea with respect to maritime safety and security in our region. But the truth is, Madam Speaker, the previous government failed to act on the information they received. It received on the suspicious movement of ships, most probably transporting substances through our waters, but they did not respond. I'll give you an example. In June of last year, there were 2 ships coming towards nearing our shores. One was heading to Seychelles, and the other one was heading here to Mauritius. The one that went to Seychelles, because they got information, was arraigned by the Seychelles authorities, and 900 kilograms of narcotics were seized. 900. However, what happened to the ships advancing in our waters? They were allowed to move freely. Nobody even stopped them. The police were made aware of this information. They were made aware. But either they got orders or they just turned a deaf ear, much to the dismay and astonishment of the Regional Maritime Information Center. Similarly, we have the assistance of countries like India, the United States, and France to enhance this regional maritime security architecture to combat on a broad range all the illegal activities on the high seas. And to reinforce maritime surveillance, we are setting up a National Maritime Information Sharing Center, which will be fully equipped to monitor, analyze, and report all vessels undertaking illicit activities in our EEZ. The invaluable support of the Government of India has been obtained to set up that center. The building is under construction, and an Indian naval officer is in Mauritius to assist in the setting up of this center. Also, with the assistance of the Government of Japan, a new coastal surveillance system will be installed to replace the old one which I had procured at the time when I was Prime Minister. They allowed it to just be out of service. Nobody was interested in having this because they did not want to monitor, in fact. Additionally, the operation of the Coast Guard is being thoroughly reviewed to ensure that information gathered regionally is used in an optimal way. Madam Speaker, under this government, the ADSU and the Customs Department had adopted a new approach to tracking drug dealers. I will obviously not mention what the new methods are, but from November 2024 to March 2025, we have witnessed a significant number of seizures of drugs amounting to an approximate value of 1.2 billion rupees. The police and the customs will be equipped with the state-of-the-art equipment to enable them to undertake their mandate in a more effective manner. Madam Speaker, since this new government came to power, it has started to devise ways and means to deal with the problem of drug abuse. I have listed the services, and I'm glad he's here, of the former Minister, Sam Lutan, and Dr. Faiz Al-Suleiman, who is also here. The latter, everybody knows Sam Lutan, but maybe not everybody knows Dr. Suleiman. The latter is a graduate from Johns Hopkins University from the United States of America. He possesses wide experience in addiction medicine and HIV/AIDS. Both of them have extensive experience in the field, and they will focus on prevention, treatment, and enforcement and harm. More importantly, Madam Speaker, what we need is people who want to do something, not people who are going to sit there like, I don't know, des poupées en cire, doing nothing, just to show they are there and get money for it, getting paid for it. What we don't want is this. We want people who are determined, like these two gentlemen are, to put an end to this terrible scourge that is happening. They have worked already closely in collaboration with the Deputy Prime Minister, with the Attorney General, and my office. And within a short time, I must say, within a very short time, they have come up with a bill to set up an agency for drug control. We are indebted to them for the prompt and effective work. Madam Speaker, the bill will establish the National Agency for Drug Control as the apex body responsible for addressing all the problems that are connected with drug abuse. And also not just Mauritius, but also Rodrigues. They will look through the reduction of supply, drug use prevention, treatment, and all this. It will be a balanced approach. This is in line with the most recent United Nations Resolution 79191 of 2024, which continues to stress the importance of a balanced approach, integrating measures for demand and supply reduction, and ensuring that drug control policies are in line with human rights obligations. It underscores the necessity of international cooperation and implementation of evidence-based practices in drug policy. Not just somebody just dreams of something. It must be evidence-based. This is how you can fight this. Madam Speaker, let me give the House an outline of the bill. The bill provides for the setting up of this National Agency for Drug Control, which will have broader responsibilities and powers than the defunct National Agency for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Substance Abuse, that is NATRESA. Section 3 of the bill provides for the setting up of a National Drug Control Commission under my chairmanship and comprising of the Deputy Prime Minister as Vice Chairperson, the Minister of Health, the Attorney General, 8 ministers as enumerated in the first schedule when they are needed. Other ministers as the Prime Minister may designate. The Chief Commissioner of the Rodrigues Regional Assembly may, at the request of the Prime Minister, attend the Commission, and persons who have wide experience in medical and healthcare, drug use prevention, or treatment and rehabilitation, as I may designate. Section 4 of the bill defines the functions and powers of the National Drug Control Commission, which include, among others, setting up national objectives and goals, and determine policies and priorities with regard to drug control. Secondly, to oversee the overall coordination of all drug control activities in Mauritius. That is why I say it is under an apex body, for greater collaboration and synergy among stakeholders. Also, to collect and analyze data and publish a brief statistical and analytical bulletin on a quarterly basis, and a comprehensive National Drug Observatory report to actually monitor the nature, magnitude, patterns, and trends in the drug trafficking and drug use. Section 5 of the bill provides for the National Agency to be a body corporate. Section 6 provides for it to have the following divisions: a policy research and strategy division, a treatment and rehabilitation services division, a prevention and public awareness division, an HIV and AIDS prevention and care coordination division, and such other divisions as the board may, with approval of the minister, set up. Section 7 of the bill defines the responsibilities of the agency, which are reducing the demands of drugs, coordinating the reduction of supply of drugs by preventing, reducing, or disrupting the entry, production, and availability of drugs. Section 8 of the bill defines the functions of the 6 divisions of the agency. In a nutshell, each division will have distinct responsibility and thus contribute to the overall functioning of the agency. The Supply Reduction and Coordination Division will coordinate national law enforcement efforts to ensure compliance with local, national, and international drug control laws and international conventions. It will also facilitate cooperation with the police, the Customs and Excise Department, and the Mauritius Revenue Authority, and also local and international organizations. More importantly, it will assist the Financial Intelligence Unit and other relevant organizations, such as the National Crime Agency, for which we will legislate very soon, in due course, in tracing and detecting money laundering and forensic financial trades related to drug trafficking. The Treatment and Rehabilitation Services Division will work in close collaboration with the Ministry of Health, the NGOs, and the Drug Users Administrative Panel for the treatment and rehabilitation of persons who use drugs and their social integration back into society. It will also establish and manage, in collaboration with the private sector and relevant government organizations, vocational training and employment programs for persons who are recovering from drug use disorders. The Prevention and Public Awareness Division will lead national awareness campaigns, carry out workshops, and develop and implement a family-based drug prevention program. Section 9 of the bill provides for the setting up of a drug control board for the administration and management of the NEDC. There will be a chairperson and representatives of various ministries and organizations, as well as representatives of civil society. Section 18 of the bill provides for the agency to prepare an annual report and submit to the minister together with an audited statement of accounts in every financial year. This was totally lacking before. Section 21 of the bill provides for no liability, civil or criminal, which shall attach to the NEDC, the board or a board member, a committee member, or any officer in respect to any act done or omitted to be done in good faith. It has to be in good faith in the discharge of his function under the Act. Section 25 of the bill provides for the protection of whistleblowers to encourage reporting of illicit activities. We will be careful because we know how malicious he is. There will be some fake whistleblowers as well. We will be very careful with this. No civil or criminal action shall be taken against any person who makes a report or disclosure. It has to be in good faith. If it is a false accusation, they will have to pay the consequences. Madam Speaker, the success of this initiative depends on a unified approach. The fight against drugs cannot be won in isolation. It is not a question of government on one side, opposition on the other. We have to work together on this. Il faut une prise de conscience collective. Il faut responsabiliser chaque Mauricien pour briser cette prolifération de la drogue qui est en train de faire des ravages dans notre pays, dans notre société, et tuer notre jeunesse, notre avenir. Government institutions, law enforcement agencies, non-governmental organizations, and the community at large must work together, hand in hand. The NADC will play a pivotal role in promoting cooperation and systemic coherence in ensuring that our interventions are aligned and effective. Furthermore, the bill prioritizes data collection and research to ensure that our strategies are continuously refined based on the latest evidence, enabling evidence-based policymaking to tackle the evolving drug landscape. A real-time monitoring system with clear performance indicators will be implemented to track drug-related trends and assess the effectiveness of intervention programs. The system will also be used to monitor patients on the Metadone program, thus ensuring a better control and management. There have been in the past some complaints about whether Metadone is becoming. That also we will look at. The NEDC will operate a 24/7 hotline specific for disclosures and work closely with law enforcement agencies to ensure swift actions on credible disclosures with the utmost confidentiality and protection for individuals involved. You know, during the last election, not just in my constituency, in many constituencies across the island, probably all constituencies, you could see people dealing with drugs. Nothing was being done. I get the feeling they were being given drugs so that they can disrupt the election. That was my feeling. But what else? Don't forget Wakasho. Why did Wakasho come at the time that it came? We ask ourselves questions. We're also positioning an HIV/AIDS division under the agency within the Prime Minister's office, and this will bring several key advantages, such as enhanced intersectoral coordination. HIV and AIDS is a cross-cutting issue, as we all know, that it cannot be addressed just by the health sector alone. Locating the division within the agency at the highest level of governance will ensure all relevant ministries, that is health, education, youth, gender equality, social security, and justice, are all brought together under a cohesive national framework fostering a whole of government approach. Placing HIV and AIDS division within the NADC will ensure better alignment between harm reduction strategies and national drug controls, particularly regarding needle exchange programs. This is where the connection is. Opioid substitution therapy and rehabilitation initiatives. This integration will lead to smarter, more efficient, and more compassionate policies for vulnerable populations. Madam Speaker, a centrally located division will better coordinate national budgets, donor funding, technical support. It will facilitate synergy between the various partners and avoid what has happened in the past, duplication of efforts, and will ensure that our national strategies are guided by consistent policies and a unified vision. Madam Speaker, the national agency is not just, this bill is not just merely a piece of legislation. It is a national commitment. It represents our collective resolve. We need to safeguard the future of our youth, as I said earlier, protect our communities, and ensure that Mauritius does not fall victim to the far-reaching consequences of drug abuse. Madam Speaker, we have a duty to our children, to our families, to our nation to act decisively. I urge all members of the House to support this bill, as it is a decisive step towards a drug-free Mauritius. Let us stand together in demonstrating our unflinching resolve to fight drug abuse and trafficking and secure a healthier, safer, and more prosperous future for all. Unless means of harm to stop the decline and decay we have witnessed for the last decade, every one of our children is at risk. No Mauritian family is immune from this threat. Far too many have woken up one day to the tragic realization that a son or a daughter has fallen prey to the predators and parasites who seek to prosper from this disgusting criminal trade. I remember, Madam Speaker, I went to a wedding at Confoucault. When I came out, as usual, people wanted to take pictures with me, even when I was in the opposition. And one guy came up to me and said, "Could I take a picture with you?" I said, "Yes, no problem." He stood there, he gave the phone to one of the policemen with me, and he said to me, "You know, I want to tell you something. I had voted against Labour Party last time, but now I'm praying every day that you come back to power, because my son has fallen into drug abuse. He's coming at home, he's beating up his mother, beating up the father, stealing money, stealing jewelry, just to be able to buy drugs. This is what we have to stop. This is why I say we have a duty to act decisively. Unless, as I say, no Mauritian family is immune from this threat, and we have to stop them. In this battle against drugs, none of us should look the other way. All of us must bear the responsibility of playing our part in defeating the social poison. This social poison they have inserted into the lifeblood of our nation. That is what they've done. And in that battle, each one of us, Madam Speaker, is on the front line. I commend the bill to the House.
Thank you. Yes, Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Merci. Merci, Madame la Présidente. Si vous me permettez, je vais, avec la permission du Premier ministre, démarrer mon intervention en empruntant une phrase qu'il a mentionnée, surtout qui est en relation avec une prise de conscience collective. Et c'est vrai, parce que le sujet est d'ordre national et c'est un fléau qui fait beaucoup de tort au pays. Madame la Présidente, je suis conscient du désarroi des parents qui sont affectés par ce fléau. Je suis père de famille, je suis grand-père et je note de jour en jour que la situation s'aggrave dans le pays et que cette jeune génération que nous avons petit à petit s'enfonce dans ce fléau qui est en train de ronger notre société. Et on dit ceci, Madame la Présidente, we are today debating on a bill which will replace the NATRESA by a new agency called the National Agency for Drug Control. And I understand from the explanatory memorandum that this agency will have a number of new attributes, and the agency will provide additional support to authorities concerned in the combat against drug trafficking and drug use. Like I said, Madam Speaker, it is indeed a subject that needs to be addressed quickly because the situation on our streets is getting alarming day by day. And one drug in particular, which we commonly call synthetic drugs, our citizens are being transformed. We've seen that on the social media into zombies, Madam Speaker, and in some cases being led to their death, and government seems to be helpless in the wake of this situation. We understand, Madam Speaker, that the National Agency for Drug Control will be the apex body which will address drug issue prevention and drug control issues. And let me, Madam Speaker, say to the House that there are three major components in this struggle. The first one is harm reduction, then supply reduction, and demand reduction. And all those three components aim at making Mauritius a better place to live, but having different mission statements. Let me say something with regard to harm reduction, Madam Speaker. It is the identification by the health authorities of the best practices as regards to medical treatment for the proper detoxification of drug addicts. Then the demand reduction. It comprises of the demand reduction strategies with rehabilitation possibilities in residential or daycare centers and for the follow-up. Madam Speaker, it must be remembered that addiction is the consumption of one or several substances, meaning that after detox, if one restarts consuming drugs again, we are back to square one and we have to start the process all over again. Madam Speaker, it should be noted also that participation to all above mentioned services should be inclusive of HIV/AIDS carriers. It is also understood, Madam Speaker, that drug demand strategies also include another important part, which is to carry out extensive prevention programs where we target workplace, women, youth, school, be it pre-primary, primary, secondary, or tertiary, and also the community at large. Madam Speaker, we have no other choice today than to prevent new cases of addiction and help those already hooked to start back a new and responsible life. With regard to supply reduction, this sensitive issue, Madam Speaker, must be left to the competent authorities of the country, that is, government, judiciary, lawmakers, police, MRAs, to be addressed at their respective levels. But they will have to work in collaboration with other stakeholders, whereby those stakeholders can submit their suggestions and proposals to those authorities for consideration. We should also, Madam Speaker, understand the difficulty faced by substance abusers to quit. These difficulties, I understand, are la peur du manque, Madame la Présidente, ce qu'on appelle fatienne, et le plaisir de l'aiguille for those who are injecting, that is, Nisa Zegui. Madam Speaker, if we understand above, addressing this scourge will be much easier. I heard the Honorable Prime Minister spoke about Metadone treatment. Madam Speaker, Metadone is being proposed as maintenance or substitution therapy. Here again, c'est la liberté de choisir du toxicomane. Metadone was introduced in Mauritius not to stop drug addiction, but to break the fast spreading of HIV/AIDS disease among injecting drug users. In fact, Madam Speaker, it must not be forgotten that Metadone is a high addictive opiate, and it will be much more difficult for an addict to detox from it. It is a pity today, Madam Speaker, that more than 10,000 Metadone users are on maintenance therapy, which is almost imposed on them. I believe that they should be left with the decision and use it on a tapering basis until they are clean. If I'm not wrong, the proposed dose to start the treatment is 40 ml. How can you, Madam Speaker, expect a substance abuser on 100 ml methadone maintenance to quit? Another issue which I want to raise today, Madam Speaker, is related, and this piece of legislation is related to the certificate of character. People having already undergone their sentence for mere consumption of drugs and petty larcenage should be allowed to have a clear certificate of character, Madam Speaker, so that they can start back a new and responsible life. Someone cannot pay 500 rupees for possession of drugs and be sentenced for life with a certificate of character which will prevent him to get a job. In short, Madam Speaker, what I'm proposing this House today is to give serious consideration to an amnesty for all those in such situations. Madam Speaker, let me now come to some sections of the bill. At clause 3.5, Madam Speaker, it is mentioned that the CEO of the future agency shall attend every meeting of the said commission. However, at clause 5.3, it is said that the NADC shall not be under the direction or control of any person or authority. I can hardly imagine a CEO of such an agency, Madam Speaker, who is being nominated by the Prime Minister, forced to attend meetings chaired by the same Prime Minister and make decisions that will go against the will of the very Prime Minister, Madam Speaker. I believe, Madam Speaker, that this new agency should have been fully independent with no interference from the executive, that is the Cabinet of Ministers, but answerable to Parliament. It is only through this way, Madam Speaker, that we would be guaranteed to collect an analysis of real data on the situation of drugs prevailing in our country. And I must say, Madam Speaker, I have no qualms with my friend, the proposed CEO of the National Agency Drug Control, who has spent most of his life combating scourges that affect our youth, including drug abuse, and he was also one of the assessors on the Commission of Inquiry against Drugs instituted in 2017. But however, I think il va m'excuser pour ce que je vais dire. I believe his views and methods might be outdated in comparison to what is being implemented in other countries to combat drug use, and I will comment further on that at a later stage. Mais je le souhaite bon vent et qu'il réussisse dans le travail qu'il va entreprendre. Comme mentionné, Madame la Présidente, dans le projet de loi, 5 divisions vont opérer sous cette commission. Et je voudrais faire 2 commentaires. Le premier concerne the Treatment and Rehabilitation Services Division. And I hope it will look into pharmacological and physiosocial treatment. Yeah, I said pharmacological and physiosocial treatment. Et le second concerne le Supply Reduction and Coordination Division. There, I hope the role and responsibilities of that division will be clearly spelled in order to avoid any misunderstanding with the law enforcement sectors. Madam Speaker, Clause 7 deals with the objects of the National Agency for Drug Control. And I wish to refer the House to Clause 7b. My question with regard to that Clause 7b is whether it will also include precursor chemicals and other chemical substances used in the manufacture of illicit drugs. Toujours concernant cette section 7b, Madame la Présidente, et je cite, to coordinate the supply reduction of drugs by preventing, reducing, or disrupting the entry, production, and availability of drugs. Ma question, c'est est-ce que cette section veut dire que la NADC va participer à la saisie des drogues? Si c'est le cas, Madame la Présidente, je ne pense pas, Madame la Présidente, que ce soit une sage décision de mélanger saisie de drogue, arrestation, réhabilitation et réinsertion. À la section 24 de ce projet de loi, il y a une clause sur la confidentialité et une amende pouvant aller jusqu'à 100 000 roupies et une peine de prison pouvant aller jusqu'à 2 ans d'emprisonnement contre toute personne qui, sans aucune excuse valable, va à l'encontre de cette section. Soyons sérieux, Madame la Présidente. Nous savons tous.
Let him develop his ideas. Allez.
Nous savons tous, Madame la Présidente, qu'un baron de la drogue peut récompenser une taupe avec 2 voire 10 fois cette somme pour une précieuse information qui permettrait d'éviter de perdre une importante cargaison de drogue, voire même de se faire arrêter. Et d'une façon générale, je pose la question, sommes-nous pas en train d'ajouter une lourdeur administrative inutile sur un processus qui se devait être discret, efficace et une entité qui aura à sa disposition un budget colossal? Madame la Présidente, nous sommes en train de remplacer la NATRESA que j'estime qui avait fait un bon travail par le National Agency for Drug Control. Madame la Présidente. Est-ce qu'il y a eu, ma question c'est, est-ce qu'il y a eu consultation avec ces acteurs avant de proposer ce projet de loi à la Chambre?
Les acteurs, vous voulez dire?
Madame la Présidente.
Les partenaires, vous voulez dire?
Oui. Oui. Madam Speaker, under the previous government, whether they agree or not, a huge step was made by amending the Dangerous Drug Act in 2022. La possession de drogue à usage personnel a été décriminalisée depuis 3 ans. Comme c'est le cas dans plusieurs pays, nous avons décidé de traiter les usagers de drogue comme des patients qui sont ainsi placés sous des traitements par le ministère de la Santé. Dans la même foulée, Madame la Présidente, nous avions introduit l'utilisation du cannabis médical. Et c'est cette décision qui a donné lieu au débat sur la légalisation ou non du cannabis à usage récréatif. Et j'estime que la question mérite d'être posée. J'aimerais bien que le Premier ministre, dans son séminaire, nous donne les chiffres du nombre de saisies de drogue synthétique effectuées depuis le début de l'année. Bien sûr, Madame la Présidente, je ne fais que relancer le débat. Et cela ne veut pas dire que je suis pour la légalisation du cannabis. Comme le Premier ministre adjoint l'avait affirmé sur une radio privée à la veille des dernières élections générales, je pense moi aussi que la question mérite d'être posée, Madame la Présidente. Concernant l'utilisation de la méthadone, malheureusement, nous avons 2 écoles de pensée dans le pays. Ceux qui estiment que la méthadone aide à réduire les risques de transmission du VIH-Sida en diminuant l'usage des seringues et en aidant un usager de drogue à arrêter la consommation de drogue dure. Et d'autres qui pensent que c'est une perte de temps. Il faut faire une évaluation. Il faut voir ce que disent les chiffres et évaluer sa réussite. En tout cas, Madame la Présidente, le trafic de cette substance est problématique. Et dans certaines régions de l'île, les habitants ne veulent plus voir des centres de distribution de méthadone. Et il y a aussi une stigmatisation terrible envers ceux qui prennent de la méthadone. Madame la Présidente, la section 8.1b4 de ce projet de loi fait mention d'un real-time tracking system. Est-ce que le Premier ministre peut donner à la Chambre plus de détails sur ce système et comment cela va se passer dans les faits? Madam Speaker, I welcome the initiative to introduce the education sector on the agenda of the NADC. It should start with our youth. They should understand why it is not an act of bravery to consume any drugs. Obviously, there is peer pressure and lack of maturity. I'm sure we have all seen the video of a student inhaling what seems to be some kind of deodorant from a plastic apparatus. And I hope the minister does not claim that this happened when the previous regime was in power. We need to act. Our children need to realize that their lives are at stake, and such behavior, Madam Speaker, is not tolerable. Taking on board the education sector is, I believe, a step in the right direction when it comes to drug use. Madam Speaker, with regard to HIV/AIDS, I noticed that the bill also includes the prevention and reduction of risk of transmission of HIV/AIDS. There is a clause, that is clause 8.1d, and HIV and AIDS Prevention and Care Coordination Division, which are stated in the piece of legislation, has clear functions. I would like for the Honorable Prime Minister to enlighten the House as to what will happen to the NGO pills, whose sole function, Madam Speaker, is exactly what this bill provides for. Has there, if I may ask the question, has there been proper consultation with that NGO before coming forward with that proposal, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, we need to bear in mind that NGOs are essential in dealing with such matters, as this subject is extremely sensitive. And we know how reluctant people are to go to government services to benefit such facilities. To conclude, Madam Speaker, like I said earlier, the drug problem has three axes, namely harm reduction, demand reduction, and supply reduction. And right now, we are trying to place all these three components under one umbrella. Like I said, let us give time to time and see whether this will work out. Le fléau de la drogue ne date pas d'hier. Le gouvernement précédent avait pris le taureau par les cornes avec avec une commission d'enquête sur la drogue. Ça, c'est un. Deuxième, des amendements à la Dangerous Drugs Act. Maintenant, c'est au tour de ce gouvernement de maintenir la cadence. Voire d'essayer de faire mieux, Madame la Présidente. Soyons sérieux, pendant que nous sommes en train de débattre sur ce projet de loi, n'oubliez pas ceci. Au même moment, il y a un jeune qui est en train de consommer de la drogue synthétique ou de s'injecter de la drogue dure dans ses veines. Il y a un père, une mère, une famille meurtrie par la perte d'un être cher, emporté dans l'enfer de la drogue. Tout cela, Madame la Présidente, c'est pour vous dire que j'ai des doutes aujourd'hui sérieux sur la capacité de cette nouvelle institution à fournir des résultats. Mais je reste optimiste. Je reste optimiste quand cela concerne l'avenir de nos enfants. J'en ai dit, Madame la Présidente.
Merci. Yes, Honorable Minister of Health, please.
Madam Speaker, this is not simply a simple legislation. This is a bold, historic, and unparalleled step, a Herculean task to reclaim our society, to rescue our youth, and to restore public trust. We have to congratulate the government in taking this revolutionary decision, because we know everybody in the streets will tell you enough is enough. We had enough of it. Never again can we allow this scourge to afflict our society and our family. Just imagine a father who loses his son or even his daughter or grandson carrying the corpse of his son, of his young son, to the cemetery or to the cremation ground. What must be the feeling? What must be the feeling of that person? And that we witness almost every day in this country. And so this is a scourge which has to be washed out. And we have to congratulate this government At least we had the courage to come forward with such a legislation. We are here today to establish a national agency for drug control under the direct aegis of the Prime Minister. I heard the leader of the opposition stating that this shouldn't have been under the Prime Minister. This is what, in fact, he said. But I don't understand his mind. There can't be any other person, any other institution better than the head of the executive to undertake such a work, and he deserves all our congratulations. This is a decisive structure, an important structure to lead the fight against drug epidemic that has crippled our nation for too long. This agency will represent a complete overhaul of our national drug response. It will strengthen our institutions. It will coordinate intervention with precision and compassion, ranging from education and prevention to treatment and rehabilitation to harm reduction, social integration, and supply control. At the center of this national revival stands a man of courage, foresight, and conviction, the Prime Minister. It can't be any other authority better than this. Despite shouldering the monumental task of running a nation which is economically and financially shattered, a nation today on its knees and rescuing these shattered finances inherited from an MSM-led government, he has chosen to take personal responsibility for the leadership of this agency. It is a mark of conviction, not convenience. Madam Speaker, this is what true statesmanship looks like. I salute him for it, and I salute the Deputy Prime Minister for the support and the contribution that he had brought to this project. And I know how many hours he has spent in supporting this move. Madam Speaker, if any new agency if this new agency represents our future, let us confront our past. The past is dead and buried, but it is important for us to have a peep at it, to have a look at it, so that we can forge ahead in future. It is a past that is marked by criminal and political negligence, institutional decay, and human suffering. It is a past that was shaped by the MSM-led government, whose record on drug is one of complete failure, a complete disaster, and it was a complete curse for our country. We all know how heroin flooded Mauritius in early 1980s under the MSM-led government, and more recently how synthetic drugs started to destroy our youth since they took office in 2014. How can we forget the dark days when MSM goons and drug peddlers would claim from housetop that gouvernement de nous la met? We still remember that. We remember the crime that was committed in early 80s in Bazaar for Ulvi, where criminals openly were moving up and down the streets and claiming that nobody can touch us because government is in our hands. So we still remember that 4 members of parliament are just, the Prime Minister spoke about it, arrested abroad. The then High Commissioner of Mauritius in England was arrested. Those were the darkest days of our Mauritian history. The shameful acts committed by political nominees and potentates and goons made us bow our head in shame. Internationally, we had lost all our respect and credibility. The recent case of Trafficking before the nose of the Prime Minister and ministers, gas cylinders, and the involvement of the famous enfants Lacaze was recently, it was disgusting, all of us know. It is therefore no wonder that substance misuse exploded under their watch, and the numbers are undeniable. Madam Speaker, in 2021, 7.4% of Mauritians aged 18 to 59 reported using illicit drugs. Today we have a population ranging from 55,000 to more than 100,000 of substance abusers. By 2024, drug abuse had become so widespread that 37% of citizens, according to Afrobarometer, identified it as one of the top 2 national issues, second only to the cost of living. The survey indicates widespread dissatisfaction with government's effort to combat the drug crisis. 70% of citizens perceive strategies as inadequate. The question, simple question that we asked, when they had all these facts and figures, what action had they taken? You go to any street, either village or city or the towns, everybody knows the addas, the centers, the pivoting point where drugs were sold. But no action was taken because these were the goons who had to vote them to bring them back to power again. That is the reason why they allowed the political ambitions, they allowed it to go higher than the interest of the nation, the interest of the common man. Madam Speaker, our streets are overrun by synthetic drugs like Black Mamba and Rambo. They are cheap, they are potent and widely available, particularly among our youth. Heroin trafficking from Madagascar has surged. In 2022, heroin was linked to 2022, it was linked to 40.3% of all drug-related arrests. According to National Drug Observatory report, in 2022, there were 1,008 drug-related admissions in public hospitals, 50.1% due to synthetic drugs, 30.7% due to opioids. Most patients were aged 20 to 37, the backbone of our future, that is our youth, were involved in that. While young people fought for their lives, our support system collapsed. This is so because a study among Mauritian male addicts and published in 2022 showed that 17% were able to abstain from drugs for a period of only 1 to 3 years. That is not a reflection of moral failure, that is a reflection of systemic abandonment. Hardly they will get out of it and they go back again to it. What was the MSM government's response? Let me state this clearly. As soon as they came to power, in December 2014, the then Minister of Health tried unsuccessfully at that time to stop Metadone program for freeze. And National AIDS Secretariat was removed from the office of the Prime Minister deliberately. That was another nail in the coffin of those who are fighting against HIV and AIDS and against the drugs. They dismantled Natreza, and I heard just now the leader of opposition stating that Natreza is being replaced. But Natreza was dead and gone at that time. They had destroyed it, killed it. It's not a replacement. This law is not replacing Natreza. Natreza is finished. They had finished it. And from that time, Natreza was eliminated till today. She's a harm, the calamity that has befallen the nation. And for this, they have to be condemned and never allowed again to take the wheels of power. Madam Speaker, Natreza was dismantled. The National Agency for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Substance Abusers, which had been the cornerstone of coordinated care and rehabilitation. With Natreza gone, they left a void, and the consequences, as I told, were devastating. Drug peddlers got complete freedom to do whatever they liked. Just imagine, they were so powerful, so strong, they could defy anybody to such an extent that even our gods and goddesses in Ganga Talab was not spared. This is what they had done. Madam Speaker, on one hand, the Labour-led government once proudly claimed, I remember we used to claim when we were in power that our aim, the Prime Minister used to say, our aim was to produce one graduate for every house. And the work of the previous government was to produce at least one drug addict for every house, in every house. That makes the difference. What was our aim and what has been their aim? So that is a gleam and shameful legacy that they have left us. That is their achievement. Instead of finding solutions, they were building illusions. To deceive the world, they set up a commission of inquiry on drugs. That was a grand display to show the world that they were really concerned. The truth is that they ignored most of its recommendations. It was a slap on the cheek of those who claimed that they are working wonders. They publicly congratulated those very people who were blamed by the Commission of Inquiry for drug situations in our country. All of us know. Under MSM government, the drug problem evolved into a public health catastrophe. It had a devastating impact on our HIV/AIDS response. Don't forget, in 2005, the MSM-led government left the country at the height of an HIV crisis, 925 new infections in 1 year, many among prison inmates with histories of injecting drug. But the Labour-led government took bold, evidence-driven and internationally acclaimed action. We implemented the Metadone substitution therapy. I heard the leader of the opposition questioning the utilization of Metadone. But this Metadone induction and follow-up is carried according to protocole de la prise en charge de l'usage des drogues à Maurice, validated by the Ministry of Health and Wellness in 2023. Its elaboration was supervised by experts, including David Mete from Réunion Island. And Metadone is a gold standard as per WHO recommendation. And the dosage recommended, you were talking about the dosage recommended is 80 to 120 milligrams. So we can't, he can say whatever he likes, but we know what we have done. They introduced medical cannabis. They introduced medical cannabis, and as a date, that was introduced around, I think, 2022. As a date, only 6 patients have been recommended and approved by medical cannabis therapy committees, and they are undergoing treatment. Only 6. And in number, there was an amendment to the Dangerous Drug Act in November 2022, and DWAP became operational. DWAP means Drug Users Administrative Panel. It became operational in 2024. But over the past months, a number of intercepted individuals for drug possessions, they prefer criminal justice system rather than the one which was set up by them, that is called DWAP. So this DWAP, it needs to be revisited, and if need be necessary amendment should be brought to it. I was talking about the decision that the Labour government had taken. We had implemented the Methadone substitution therapy. We introduced the needle exchange program. We brought in HIV/AIDS legislation. We set up the National AIDS Secretariat under the Office of the Prime Minister. We developed a harm reduction framework that reversed the trend from 2006 to 2010. HIV cases among people who inject drugs, PWID we call them, dropped significantly down to about 50 per month. Up till 2014, we maintained real and true control. There was full vigilance. But under the MSM back in power, we saw a terrifying resurgence. In 2024, 549 new HIV infections were detected, a 44% increase. Among men, infections rose by 60.3%. Among women, infections rose by 15%. 243 new cases were found among people who inject drugs, with 70% identified at the point of entry in prisons. The epidemic has shifted. Injecting drug use now fuels 45% of new infection, while 50% come from heterosexual transmission. This means that the virus is moving beyond high-risk groups into population carried on the back of unsafe behaviors, stigma, and reduced harm reduction coverage. The needle syringe program, NSP, and the opioid substitution therapy, OST, once effective, are now under-resourced and underutilized. As HIV became more manageable thanks to modern treatment, it's undetectable and therefore untransmittable, hence complacency sets in. Added to that was the devastating impact of stigma, discrimination, and legal barriers, which drive people away from services. People living with HIV or struggling with addiction are forced into hiding. When they hide, the virus spreads, the addiction deepens. But Madam Speaker, we are here today to change all that. The National Agency for Drug Control will be a coordinating powerhouse, a unifying body across ministries and communities, institutions and NGOs, prisons and private clinics, homes and schools. It will coordinate public education and prevention, demand reduction among youth, rehabilitation that works, harm reduction that protects, social reintegration that restores dignity, supply reduction that disrupts trafficking that works. Critically, within this agency, we will establish a dedicated HIV and AIDS coordinating division to integrate the national HIV response with our drug policy. It will ensure alignment with UN AIDS 95/95/95 SDC and the Global AIDS Strategy 21 to 26. That 95 means 95% reduction in new HIV infections, 95% access to antiretroviral treatment, and 95% viral suppression. It will roll out community-based testing, treatment, and prevention. The new agency will monitor and evaluate progress in real time. It will mobilize resources, both nationally and internationally, and drive right-based advocacy to end stigma and discrimination. Madam Speaker, this is not merely a bill, it is a blueprint for national salvation. This is a message of hope to a mother who is despaired and distressed to see her child slip into addiction. This agency will be your ally and your friend. To the young woman afraid to seek HIV testing, this agency will protect your rights. To the man behind bar, ready to rebuild his life, this agency will open that door. This is the moment of redemption. This is our government fulfilling its mission and its promise. And this is the Prime Minister showing once again what leadership, vision, empathy, and courage can accomplish. This is what true leadership means: to lead, not to mislead, to guide, not to misguide, to serve the nation, not make the nation serve you. I again thank the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister, and I'll say you have worked wonders. Thank you.
Yes, Madam.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Ce projet de loi, Madame la Présidente, représente une lueur d'espoir pour notre nation. Il marque une volonté sérieuse de structurer notre réponse à la crise nationale à travers une institution dédiée avec des objectifs bien définis. Madame la Présidente, dans ce projet de loi, 3 mots-clés ressortent et méritent toute notre attention: la réintégration, la prévention et la réhabilitation. Ces 3 piliers doivent devenir des fondements d'une politique cohérente, humaine et efficace contre la drogue. Madame la Présidente, permettez-moi d'aborder clairement les différents points en lien direct avec le projet de loi sur la création de la National Agency for Drug Control. La clause 2B est un point central dans la lutte contre la drogue, et si nous ne réussissons pas à perturber la chaîne d'approvisionnement, hélas, tout ce que nous allons mettre en place sous la clause 3B seront en vain. Je tiens donc à féliciter le ministre du Tourisme, l'honorable Richard Duval, pour l'initiative à venir équiper tous les bateaux de plaisance d'un automatic identification system. Ceux-ci permettront de mieux contrôler et surveiller les déplacements, ainsi la chaîne d'approvisionnement de la drogue sera fortement perturbée. Madame la Présidente, je voudrais humblement demander à l'honorable Premier ministre de bien vouloir modifier le first schedule de cette loi afin d'inclure le ministre responsable du tourisme dans la liste des ministres dans la Commission nationale de la contrôle des drogues, ou utiliser sa prérogative comme lui permet sous la clause 3, section 2F du bill. Ce ministère joue un rôle important dans la lutte contre la drogue, contre l'offre de drogue, dans notre pays car il réglemente et surveille les licences des bateaux de plaisance. Deuxièmement, il devrait inclure le campagne touristes que Maurice impose une peine sévère pour les importateurs de drogue avec une peine maximale pouvant aller jusqu'à 60 ans. Madame la Présidente, en examinant les articles 3 à 7 de ce projet de loi, je constate que les 3 points clés mentionnés précédemment sont traités par une division spécifique du NAD. Le Conseil de contrôle des drogues, composé des fonctionnaires d'organismes chargés de l'application des lois, ONG et d'organisations communautaires telles définies l'article 9, gérera la NAD. Il ne faut pas qu'avec une telle structure, la lutte contre la drogue, la réinsertion, la prévention et la réhabilitation des toxicomanes s'enlisent dans des procédures administratives lourdes, ce qui empêcherait notre pays de mener à bien ce combat crucial pour libérer notre jeunesse de cette menace. Et pour cela, je fais confiance à la National Agency for Drugs Control. Venons maintenant à la clause 8, 1b de ce projet de loi, traitant de la Treatment and Rehabilitation Services Division. Nous devrions inclure des dispositions pour faciliter les démarches administratives concernant la garde des enfants dont les parents sont toxicomanes. Une prise en charge simplifiée par les membres proches de la famille est nécessaire afin d'éviter des problèmes administratifs dans des écoles et des hôpitaux, ce qui soulagerait les parents en cours de réhabilitation et les grands-parents qui souvent s'occupent de leurs petits-enfants abandonnés par leurs parents toxicomanes. La clause 8.1c, liée à la préservation, doit absolument prendre compte la réalité douloureuse, la prostitution infantile associée à la toxicomanie, Madame la Présidente. Des jeunes dépendants se tournent malheureusement vers cette pratique pour financer leurs addictions. La NADC doit donc prévoir des mesures spécifiques en collaboration étroite avec des ONG spécialisées pour protéger des enfants et leur offrir une alternative durable. Toujours dans la clause 8, il faudrait donner à la Policy Research Strategy Division la responsabilité de revoir les procédures concernant les allégations et charges provisoires, Madame la Présidente. Imaginez-vous si M. Peromal Viren avait fait de telles graves allégations de financement des trafics de drogue à l'encontre d'un simple citoyen. Arrestation, pas de caution, charge provisoire, Madame la Présidente, pour l'ex-premier ministre, comme on dit en créole, Gilles Lebret-Songe. Madame la Présidente, ce traitement différencié, injuste, et doit immédiatement cesser. Nous devons assurer une justice équitable pour tous, où chaque citoyen, indépendamment de son statut social, reçoit un traitement juste et impartial. Il faut impérativement redorer le blason de nos institutions. Et je salue le courage de l'honorable Premier ministre, le Dr Navin Ramgoolam, qui a nommé un commissaire de police digne de ce nom, dont le travail a commencé à porter ses fruits avec des récents démantèlements et des saisies de records des drogues dures. Madame la Présidente, concernant la clause 8.2L, qui traite de la collaboration avec le secteur privé. Il est essentiel de rappeler que la réhabilitation des toxicomanes et des ex-détenus doivent être sérieusement repensées. Aujourd'hui, le certificat de moralité représente une énorme barrière à la réinsertion sociale et professionnelle, Madame la Présidente. À Maurice, ce certificat est exigé pour enregistrer une ONG, pour obtenir une carte de pêcheur professionnel, pour effectuer des démarches administratives et pour trouver du travail pour subvenir aux besoins de sa famille. Pourtant, étrangement, ce même certificat n'est pas requis pour être candidat aux élections législatives et devenir un membre de cette auguste assemblée pour gérer les biens et les fonds publics. Cette incohérence est inacceptable et profondément injuste, Madame la Présidente. D'où la valse des défilés de voleurs à col blanc à la FCC, sans menottes et en plus, petite pochette à la main, jusqu'à la fin, Madame la Présidente. Nous devons mettre fin à cette hypocrisie flagrante. Toute personne ayant payé sa dette à la société mérite une seconde chance. Je propose donc qu'après une période de 10 ans ou plus, sans récidive, une grâce présidentielle automatique soit accordée sur les casiers judiciaires de ces personnes. Il est injuste que cette grâce soit sélectivement accordée, comme ce fut rapidement pour le fiston de l'ancien commissaire de police type, alors que les autres citoyens sont traités autrement. Cette injustice doit prendre fin. Madame la Présidente, nous devons aussi intensifier les campagnes de sensibilisation auprès des jeunes en leur expliquant clairement les lourdes conséquences légales liées à l'implication même indirecte dans le trafic de drogue. Il est essentiel de faire une distinction claire dans nos lois entre consommateurs et trafiquants, afin de mieux protéger les consommateurs en leur offrant une aide adaptée plutôt qu'une sanction sévère. Par rapport à la clause 25 concernant la gestion dénonciation d'anonymes, il est essentiel d'établir un cadre clair et juste. Actuellement, le mécanisme est trop souvent utilisé par les trafiquants pour éliminer leurs rivaux. Là-dessous doit arrêter ce système où gros poisson mange petit poisson. De plus, Madame la Présidente, là-dessous doit être équipé des tests rapides de détection des drogues. Qui ne se souvient pas de cet artiste arrêté par là-dessous pour des faits de trafic de drogue qui a passé 2 mois et demi en détention, où finalement, le rapport du FSL vient dire que c'était de la nourriture pour poissons. Madame la Présidente, 2 mois et demi en détention, exposé à la drogue, au VIH, pour une simple nourriture de poisson, c'est très grave, Madame la Présidente. Madame la Présidente, le lien entre la toxicomanie, la prostitution et la propagation du VIH est aussi très préoccupant. Je suis ravie de voir qu'il y aura au sein de la NADC un VIH and AIDS Prevention and Care Coordination Division avec l'intégration des programmes spécifiques, réduction des risques. Les mesures et les campagnes permettront à réduire significativement la transmission du VIH parmi les toxicomanes. Je vais dire ce que le leader de l'opposition n'a pas eu le guts pour dire concernant la clause 27 de ce projet de loi qui propose des amendements au Dangerous Drug Act. Il est aussi crucial d'amender le first schedule afin de retirer le cannabis de la liste des drogues dangereuses, Madame la Présidente. Cette recommandation est en parfaite cohérence avec la décision historique prise en 2020 par la Commission des stupéfiants des Nations Unies qui a voté en faveur du retrait du cannabis du 4e schedule de la Convention de 1961. Reconnaissant ainsi ces usages médicaux, plusieurs pays ont déjà emboîté le pas. Pourquoi pas Maurice? Ces pays ont compris que le cannabis ne présente pas le même niveau de dangerosité que la drogue de synthèse. À Maurice, nous faisons face à des décès liés aux drogues synthétiques, alors même qu'aucune donnée ne signale un seul cas de décès par overdose de cannabis. Il est donc plus temps de concentrer nos ressources et nos efforts là où l'urgence sanitaire est réelle et de reconsidérer sérieusement de mettre fin à la criminalisation excessive de nos jeunes qui consomment du cannabis. Madame la Présidente, rappelons-nous que la drogue n'est plus seulement un problème isolé, mais bien une pandémie qui nous concerne tous directement ou indirectement. Tant que nos infrastructures sportives, nos centres de jeunesse et nos espaces culturels resteront peu fréquentée et sans vie comme l'a laissé le gouvernement MSM, le problème de la drogue continuera à s'aggraver. Il ne faut pas oublier que nos artistes locaux mènent depuis des décennies un combat contre la prolifération de la drogue et font un gros travail de sensibilisation et de prévention. À travers leurs chansons, slam, l'art et entre autres, il faut leur donner une plateforme et beaucoup plus de ressources et de moyens pour s'exprimer. Pour conclure, Madame la Présidente, honorables membres, agissons ensemble. Seule la volonté, la solidarité qui parviendront à surmonter ce fléau national. Je vous remercie, Madame la Présidente.
Merci. Honorable Minister. Thank Honorable Minister.
Yes, Madam Speaker.
We try and keep the time, please.
Yes, I'll try very hard and I
Yes.
shall be guided by yourself. Madam Speaker, at the outset, I'm perplexed as to whether I should follow what I have to say or respond to the leader of the opposition first, but I shall be patient with it. Madam Speaker, today marks a watershed moment in our nation's fight against the scourge of drugs that has plagued our society for far too long. As a member of this August Assembly, as a Minister of Public Service and Administrative Reforms, as a father and a citizen of this country who believes deeply in our nation's potential, I stand before you with profound sorrow but renewed hope. Our country is facing an unprecedented drug scourge which is destroying the lives of thousands of youngs who fall prey to these marches de la mort. Such an alarming situation is unparalleled, and indeed, very bold initiatives are warranted to combat this evil. Therefore, as I make my humble contribution to the debate on the National Agency for Drug Control Bill, I do so with full weight of our government's mandate, a mandate written in the quiet suffering of parents watching their children disappear into addiction, in the frustrated dedication of police officers whose arrests led nowhere, in the fading dreams of young people who deserved better protection from this scourge from a more responsible government. Madam Speaker, this is not an instance of good debt. We go back to our manifest itself. If I may, Madam Speaker, refer to page 56 of our manifest. And that, Madam Speaker, was a drone written, it was calculated from the sufferings of people we have witnessed, listened to, and were very alert. We write at page 56, aucun Mauricien ne dira qu'il y a moins de drogue dans le pays depuis l'ascension au pouvoir du précédent gouvernement. Aujourd'hui, la consommation de drogue s'est répandue dans tous les coins et recoins du pays. Cette situation a, selon de nombreux observateurs, aussi occasionné une recrudescence des vols et d'autres crimes dans le pays. Les combats contre le trafic et la consommation de drogue sera une des grandes priorités de notre gouvernement. Il faut absolument mettre fin à la souffrance des familles et de la société en général. Ces combats, sans relâche, sera accompagné d'une politique d'aide à l'élimination de la dépendance sur les drogues, néfaste à la société, à la santé de nos jeunes et à leur avenir. Madam Speaker, we started there and then. while we started our fight against an irresponsible government taking our youth to the dead end with this evil of drugs. We did not stop there. We go even further. Our government program presented by the President of this country, His Excellency, spoke lengthily, and he went to page 28, paragraph 56, where he mentioned in clear lines the following words, Madam Speaker: the fight against drug trafficking and use will be one of the major priorities of the government. Additional resources will be provided to the police to increase its capacity to deal more efficiently with drug trafficking and related issues. Government will adopt bold measures to end the suffering of families and society in general as a result of the significant increases in drug trafficking over the last few years and the breakdown in law and order. Madam Speaker, therefore, what the Honourable Prime Minister has presented to this August Assembly, to the House, is not a surprise in any way. It is something that this government has a duty, has a solemn duty to answer to the needs of our youth, our future, the suffering families, and the people together in this battle, in this fight. Madam Speaker, the recent electoral landslide victory that brought this government to power was in many ways a referendum on the failure to protect our citizens from the scourge of drugs. While the previous government commissioned inquiries and produced reports, including the notable commission inquiry on drugs, the harsh reality is that most recommendations gathered dust on shelves, while our communities, our families, our children continued to suffer. Madam Speaker, this pattern of neglect, this pattern of inaction, this pattern of a lack of will to do something good for our children, I almost think it is deliberate on the part of those who are responsible. Had it not been deliberate, then how can we explain, Madam Speaker, the sudden discontinuation of a system which was working, as mentioned by the leader of the opposition himself, Natreza? Overnight, that whole institution was closed down. Overnight, there was nowhere for our children, our youth, the people suffering from drugs, from drug abuse, to go. They were left dismayed. They were left without help. But then again, was that also deliberate in the hands of responsible people? Because had those people addicted to drugs had nowhere to go, who they would turn to? Supply and demand. The higher the demand, the better the supply. Did we not witness this as well? We have heard many times from Honorable Anil Bechu. We have heard how from Viren Perumal to Franklin, to Tractopelle, to Mont-Saint-Bret-de-Sons, and what so to mention. These people, in their turn, in their guts, thought they were fighting against drugs. And what did they do? At the end of that fight, the people of this nation thought they had some hope when they had the striking team, when they had a group of people identified by the then Prime Minister as the group chosen to fight against drugs. And what then happened? What then happened? There was planting, there was organized allegations, there was mistreatment, there was what not to say. But I have one thing to say to the gentleman who was responsible of that team. I shall not take his name. My dear friend, you also have hope. Because this government is acting responsibly, and the child arrested in Montalblanc with possession will not be treated as a vulgar offender of the law. He will be given his chance to be rehabilitated through this law. He will be given his chance to be reinserted through this law. He'll be given his chance to be reaccepted by the society through this law. Madam Speaker, allow me please to refer to the experience as gathered at the bench. I'm happy to see Comrade Lawton amongst us. I've had the pleasure, I call him Comrade because he knows very well, we go a long way. And I'm so pleased that our Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister have chosen you, sir, to lead us in the right way, together with the colleagues. I knocked at his door so many times when I was a magistrate. I begged for his support and his guidance when I was a magistrate. I am amongst the few, and I can say it loud and clear, Madam Speaker, amongst the few magistrates who sent very, 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 very few people in custody with addiction problems. Most of the times, I knocked at the door of my comrade, Mr. Lawton. I requested him to guide me how to help these people. Briefly, my friend Andrew Bechu mentioned how difficult it is for a parent to carry someone who has passed away from his family. Madam Speaker, allow me. There was a homicide at Rousseau-les-Pousses a while ago. I was sitting at the bench. A lady came, 8th time for soliciting. But together with her, there was another young girl and 2 men. It so happened the young girl was the daughter of this lady, also walking on the street. It so happened the man next to him was a concubine, the 7th concubine, who was involved in that homicide. And the other young man was her son. Madam Speaker, all this was related to drugs. I was inclined to find a person for the 8th time soliciting to send her into custodial sentence, which I didn't. Instead, I went to visit where she was living. And she was living in Carocalchis. I went there with my jeans and a cap just to see the conditions. I came back. I contacted my friend for rehab. And then I contacted the church for CSO, Community Service Order. I did not send the person to jail. My Speaker, there are so many examples that sufferings prevail. There's this person, my Speaker, who stole the rice from le bal des riz qu'on a à la maison, qu'on fait l'achat, notre ration. He took the rice from the rice bag. He sold the rice to buy himself drugs. And he replaced pebbles and rocks and then covered that with the rice. Imagine the dismay of the mother when she went to get the rice to do the cooking and she found what not there. But worst of all, this person lives in our constituency. The father came to me to take the person out on bail. And he was so much crying, the only son of the family. He sold the jewelry of the mother that she was given when she was married to the father. He went to steal next door. He was then for PSPN theft. In this background, against these calamities, that this government is taking its responsibility. And yet, the leader of the opposition stands there lecturing what to do and what not to do with the law. I was sitting here patiently waiting. Quand les goutiers pour monsieur CWA, papa? I was waiting, Madam Speaker, that he would say something about his expertise, being an engineer, explain to us why this mess is there that we're facing through the Minister of Public Utilities. Instead, he lectures us on something that he doesn't even understand. Should he have understood, for the 10 years he's been sitting in the government, should he have understood the miseries of the families, of the kids, of the society, he should have opened his mouth to his then Prime Minister and said to him, hey, your minister is saying tempête de verre. Your minister is saying femme not raison. Your minister is talking rubbish because he's inclined to send people suffering from drugs to Brown Secord, treating them as mad people. Let us open something better equipped, a center to rehabilitate these people. Madam Speaker, you and I come from the same background, we are lawyers. We know that the philosophy, the principle of jurisprudence has taught us about retribution from ages ago. We then moved into rehabilitation. Some jurisdictions have gone into restitution already. I pray that our jurisdiction goes further into redemption. These 3 R's will dictate the future of our youngs, of our people, or the future of our country. In the capable hands of these competent people, we spent a lifetime fighting against the evil side of drug abuse. Allow me, Madam Speaker. Mr. Lawton is a person who didn't see a person abusing drug. He saw his son suffering. He didn't see a person to be sent into custody. He saw a father in need of help to take care of the family. In his own capacity, with his own means, he carried on a battle together with the team. If I say if it's only him, it would not be just. And you know, my tongue, I'm very sharp, but I'm just. Mr. Lawton, you and your team fought for a battle by yourselves.
Address me, please.
I am, Madam Speaker. Please. I am, Madam Speaker, pleased to be part of a government who is standing united for the welfare of our children, our country, our future, to give support to such competent people, to provide policy decisions, to provide legal framework, to ensure that there is a one-stop shop somewhere. I don't know which part of the law the leader opposition read to say that this NADC is going to substitute itself to the police or the MOA. I don't know which part of the law he misread or he deliberately, once more, because he's got the viruses of the previous government, to be able to misread and misdo everything. Should he have taken care of to read the plain English? This is one of the pieces of law which I said to the AG earlier on. Well drafted, sharp, clean, clear, and easy to apply. This is a good piece of drafting to make law and legal provisions available to those in need. This piece of law is going to be a symbol in itself to provide our country with hope for the future, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in line with our manifest, in line with our program, with at heart the future of our youth, the welfare of our country, and our incessant battle fight against the evil of drug, we stand united and we vouch for this bill. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. Ms. Colette?
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. A bridge to the future. Que la République de Maurice soit à nouveau la République de Maurice. Nous avons tous ce souhait et nous pouvons essayer. Madame la Présidente, imaginez un futur où chaque citoyen, où des jeunes des quartiers animés aux parents et grands-parents dévoués vivent dans une communauté protégée des désordres et des ravages des drogues, avec des autorités publiques, des ONG et une société civile activement engagée à la coordination de bonne foi entre eux, avec une gouvernance exemplaire. Imaginez un futur où les vies ne sont plus définies par des dépendances, mais par des opportunités de empowerment, coming clean, staying clean, dans une société saine. Consommons des fruits et légumes et non des drogues illicites. Ce rêve, bien que lointain pour certains, pourrait devenir une réalité grâce à l'introduction du projet de loi sur l'Agence nationale de contrôle des drogues, en version raccourcie, l'ANADEC. Il est clair que parmi les grandes priorités du gouvernement actuel, comme annoncé dans le programme gouvernemental 2025-2029, l'une des priorités majeures de ce gouvernement est la mesure contre ce fléau national qui est le trafic, l'usage et l'abus de drogue. La drogue, Madame la Présidente, est définie dans ce projet de loi comme étant une substance naturelle ou synthétique, licite ou illicite. La lutte contre les drogues à travers la République de Maurice dépasse les simples chiffres et les débats politiques. C'est une lutte pour des vies, pour la sécurité mentale et physique des familles, pour une jeunesse qui mérite mieux qu'un avenir brisé par-dessus des dommages psychologiques. Partout à travers la République, des parents pleurent leurs enfants, des quartiers voient leur lumière s'éteindre et des destins prometteurs sont balayés par une dépendance implacable, des hallucinations, des violences, des troubles mentaux, enfants viennent zombies avec zombies, Crystal Meth est le nouveau bijou de la tentation, ou Black Mamba, on croirait que c'est une danse performance de K-pop, est-ce pas? Pourquoi de tels noms de drogue? Sûrement pour expliquer leur effet dans le corps de ceux qui en abusent. Madame la Présidente, la 7e Assemblée, avec nos prédécesseurs, avait commandité un National Drug Control Master Plan 2019-2023. À la page 8 du National Drug Control Master Plan 2019-2023, si vous me permettez de reprendre un extrait dans cette Assemblée, Madame la Présidente, je cite, « The island of Rodrigues, being part of the Republic of Mauritius, is included in this master plan. While it is understood that the severity of drug use and trafficking is limited, relevant necessary actions as defined in the log frame will be undertaken to protect health and combat drug-related crime. According to ADSU reports, cannabis is the main drug used in Rodrigues. It is cultivated and distributed throughout the island. A few cases of use of heroin and synthetic drugs have also been reported. » Fin de citation. Madame la Présidente, au moment où ce plan directeur était développé pour la période 2019-2023, bien que l'on comprenait que la gravité de la consommation et du trafic de drogue était limitée, on préconisait que les actions nécessaires, définies dans le cadre logique, allaient être mises en œuvre pour protéger la santé et lutter contre la criminalité liée aux drogues. Selon les rapports de l'ADSU de l'époque, le cannabis était la principale drogue consommée à Rodrigues. Il était cultivé et distribué à travers l'île. Quelques cas de consommation d'héroïne et de drogues synthétiques étaient également signalés. À la page 13 de ce plan directeur, on voit le tableau 5 affichant Arrests for Drug Offenses in Rodrigues in 2017 and 2018. En moyenne, une soixantaine d'hommes, 4 femmes et 2 jeunes avaient été arrêtés pour des délits liés aux drogues. Cette assemblée constaterait, Madame la Présidente, que Rodrigues, longtemps vierge et préservé, Rodrigues sent désormais le poids d'une autre réalité. Et chaque jour, la détresse grandit. Les statistiques à ce jour sont alarmantes. Nous ne pouvons plus détourner le regard. Plusieurs villages bien fréquentés, des écoles, plus précisément 2 collèges pour le moment, et plusieurs familles sont touchées par les fléaux de la drogue et les conséquences directes et indirectes. Les dealers, les marchands de drogue s'infiltrent. La consommation et l'abus de drogue augmentent. Les autorités publiques, les ONG ont des difficultés de coordination soutenues entre eux pour lutter contre cela efficacement. Certains ONG tels Crack Antidrogue figurent comme associations engagées activement dans la prévention. Le soutien des psychiatres, psychologues et éducateurs dans les écoles, je pense, reste prépondérante. J'apprécie beaucoup les films d'horreur avec zombies, Madame la Présidente. Toutefois, moi, et je pense cette Assemblée aussi, avec nos collègues, nous ne souhaitons pas voir des transformations en zombies dans nos îles. Nous ne voulons pas de cartels contrôlant les marchés illégaux. Nous ne voulons pas de Martin criant polico-crapaud quand il y a des landings. Nous ne voulons pas de décès dus à des overdoses. Nous ne voulons pas de récidive de ceux ayant déjà été dans l'hyène. Nous souhaitons protéger notre peuple et garantir la sécurité de nos familles. Le projet de loi sur l'Agence nationale de contrôle des drogues, Madame la Présidente, incarne une réponse, un espoir, une main tendue à ceux qui sombrent dans le silence de la tentation de trafiquer, dans la tentation de consommer les drogues et bien sûr l'addiction. Avec un représentant de Rodrigues, cette loi marque un tournant, un engagement vers une approche qui ne se limite pas à punir, mais cherche plutôt à guérir et à reconstruire. À prévenir, le dit bien ce dicton, mieux vaut prévenir que guérir. Et je pense, Madame la Présidente, qu'il s'agit d'un signal fort, celui d'une société qui refuse d'abandonner ses citoyens à leur sort. La NADEC, sous la supervision directe du Premier ministre, qui est aussi ministre de Rodrigues et des îles, deviendra le pilier de cette transformation dans notre société rodriguaise et mauricienne. Grâce à une stratégie fondée sur la prévention, le traitement et la réhabilitation, elle offrira à chaque personne une chance de reprendre sa vie en main. Car chaque individu mérite bien plus qu'un simple verdict. Il mérite de retrouver sa dignité, de renouer avec l'espoir de se reconstruire dans une société qui croit en lui, et nous croyons bien sûr en notre peuple ou ce segment du peuple qui est affecté. Ce projet de loi créant la NADEC est nécessaire, Madame la Présidente, puisque la NADEC sera l'organisme central chargé de la prévention et du contrôle des drogues dans la République. La NADEC aura des responsabilités élargies, avec des pouvoirs plus vastes que ceux de l'ancienne NATRESA, c'est sûr. Et la NADEC sera gérée par un conseil. La NADEC, certainement, aura peut-être à débattre de mesures pour ou contre la dépénalisation, entre autres. Et je vois qu'avec la création de la NADEC, l'accent est mis sur la prévention de la consommation des drogues, la coordination du traitement, de la réhabilitation et de la réintégration sociale et des stratégies de réduction de risques pour limiter les conséquences sanitaires et sociales, y compris la prévention des maladies transmissibles telles le VIH-Sida et l'hépatite C. Toutefois, Madame la Présidente, nous ne pouvons pas nous contenter d'une initiative inachevée. Nous devons l'adapter, la renforcer, l'améliorer pour qu'elle puisse réellement changer des vies malgré les ressources limitées compte tenu de l'état de notre économie et bien sûr peut-être un manque d'expertise et de techniciens formés dans ces domaines. À travers le monde, des programmes similaires ont connu des succès et des échecs. Certains ont permis une meilleure coordination et un accompagnement humain, tandis que d'autres se sont enlisés dans une bureaucratie pesante où on négligeait l'aspect social du combat. La République de Maurice, elle, doit tirer les leçons de ces expériences et veiller à ce que ce projet de loi soit porté par une gouvernance solide, une transparence sans faille et un engagement profond de la société civile. Pour que cette réforme soit véritablement efficace, il est essentiel de mettre en place des mécanismes de suivi accessibles à tous, de favoriser les partenariats internationaux et d'assurer une formation rigoureuse des professionnels qui y sont impliqués. Surtout, nous devons faire de cette lutte un combat collectif, Madame la Présidente, car aucune loi, aussi bien pensée soit-elle, ne peut fonctionner sans l'implication des citoyens, des communautés, des familles, en gros, du peuple. Nous sommes à un tournant, nous avons l'occasion de prouver que nous sommes capables de nous unir pour offrir à notre peuple un avenir qui ne soit pas marqué par l'angoisse et la souffrance liée directement ou indirectement aux drogues. Ce projet n'est pas seulement une réponse politique, c'est un appel à la solidarité, un cri du cœur pour que nous ne perdions plus personne dans l'oubli. Chaque vie compte, Madame la Présidente, chaque individu mérite une seconde chance, Ensemble, avec détermination et humanité, le peuple peut et doit être plus fort que ce fléau national. Et aujourd'hui, nous avons la responsabilité de faire en sorte que cette promesse devienne une réalité. Et pour ces raisons, Madame la Présidente, au nom du peuple, j'accueille favorablement ce projet de loi. Merci.
Je vous remercie. Monsieur le ministre Boudel.
Madam Speaker, I have listened very intently to all speeches, and of course, I've paid particular attention to the speech delivered by the Honorable Prime Minister. His speech was poignant and very powerful. And he has conveyed a message loud and clear. And the underlying theme of his speech is support that we have to dispense to those who are victims of this scourge. But we want to wage an intensive war on those who are drug traffickers. And when I listen to the speech delivered by the Prime Minister, the underlying theme and the message that has been conveyed is bio-psycho-social problem. And we have to address these problems. This is not only the responsibility of a responsible government, but it is the responsibility of the nation, and the nation has to arise awake and stop not till we defeat those who are killers of our children. And we have to stand up, put up a common front, and say no to those who are doing harm to our children. We have to make the difference. And to make the difference, the nation has to come together. There should be no fear. There should be no prejudice. But as a nation, we have to stand up. The message is not only being conveyed here, but it has to be heard loud and clear by one and all. I feel sorry that the leader of the opposition has chosen to make an exit. I won't say whether it's a dishonorable exit, but he has chosen to leave the room. And more so when we are discussing an issue that cut across political differences. But of course, what had to be said had to be said. To a large extent, the previous government was responsible for the proliferation of the scourge because of the nexus it had with the mafia. under the previous regime, mafia ruled the waves, but we are saying the tide will not rise. It will be low tide. And we are going to be forceful. We are going to mobilize all our resources to ward off threats from those who think they can disrupt our social life. And this bill, there are some people who say that yet another bill. No, the bill before the House is not just another bill. It is a bill with broad ideas. It is a bill which has been prepared after wide discussion at the bar of public opinion. It is a bill which has taken on board input from all stakeholders. And there are lessons, and lessons have been learned and drawn from the experience of the National Agency for the Treatment and Rehabilitation of Substance Abusers. We as a government, I've said it and I will reinforce what I've said. We are resolute and determined to weed out the worst scourge faced by the nation. And when I look at the provisions of the bill, notwithstanding Clause 4, the Commission will be chaired by the Prime Minister. And it's the strong signals which are being conveyed. Prime Minister is not only first amongst the equals, together with the Deputy Prime Minister, decisions will be taken to ward off those threats and to tell those who are killers, those who are maiming our children, that we are going to make the difference and we are warning them to stay away. And we will see to it, and I will come to that at a later stage when I will talk on the importance and relevance of the Financial Anti-Money Laundering Act. So, what is the relevance of this commission being chaired by the Prime Minister? He will engage with the public through advocacy and awareness campaign, highlighting the risks of medication misuse and promoting informed healthcare choices. And the keywords have been highlighted by all of us. The keywords are demand reduction and supply reduction. And there are provisions made for the setting up of this National Drug Agency Control Commission. But I will draw attention to 4F, that progress will be made, will be monitored by drug departments through the setting up of performance indicators. And it reminds us of the relevance and importance of pharmacovigilance. I will come to section 8.1a, subsection 2, 1a, 2, where it is stated unequivocally that for the National Agency for Drug Control to attain its objective, and I quote, it shall coordinate and facilitate efforts at national level toward the implementation of National Drug Control Master Plan and the National Action Plan for HIV and AIDS and any other drug control strategy. Yes, a report has been submitted. An action plan has been submitted. But if there was seriousness of purpose, if there was willingness on the part of the previous government to be aggressive, to wage war intensively against the mafia, against the drug traffickers, they would have set this action plan to the different ministries. That plan would have been costed. But we have given commitment that there will be implementation of the action plan, of the action plan and the master plan. But not only are we giving commitment, but we will mobilize our resources to implement the National Drug Control Master Plan. There is seriousness of purpose. And Prime Minister has seen to it that there are provisions in the bill in relation to Action Plan and National Drug Control Master Plan. But not only are we determined and totally committed, I expect our foreign scientific lab, I hope that the foreign scientific lab will not let us down. It has all the reagents and the up-to-date equipment to conduct tests, and I hope I don't hear of false positive tests or false negative results. The lab is here to serve, and it has to deliver specific results. This is the relevance and importance of the forensic scientific lab. We know what happened in the past when dirty fingers manipulated results. Under the previous government, anything went because of the nexus with drug traffickers. But what? We still have a parallel economy. But as I've stated, we have a clear mandate to break the nexus between the drug mafia and those who manipulated power to corrupt. The fight does not ignore the use of technology, and we know what is happening, and we have to put an end to it, but because there's payment, and payment is being done with cryptocurrency to launder money. This is how payment is being effected. This is why we as a government, we are resolute in our fight to wage war on drug traffickers. We are determined. We have the will and we have the political will. This is the will of the L'Alliance du Changement. And as we say, the only factor in life which made constant is change. And there will be fundamental change in relation to the war that we are waging on drug traffickers. And this parallel economy, Madam Speaker, has flourished with the complicity and duplicity of the MSM regime. Why did the former Prime Minister fail to depose before the Commission of Inquiry chaired by former Justice Lam Shamnid? I deposed as a responsible politician and spoke fearlessly because we have to put the safety of our kids, of our people first. They are our best assets. Findings of the report were damning against the MSM MPs and lawyers close to them. And this has been stated and canvassed fully, but I won't come back to it, but let me say, unfortunately, the previous government did not learn any lessons. I'm not going to highlight what my good friend, Honorable Bechu, has stated in relation to the famous rave party during the peak of COVID in a sachet in the vicinity of Ganga Talab. And this was a scandal of epic proportion. Drugs were freely circulated in the vicinity of Ganga Talab. Madam Speaker, I mentioned earlier, and I refer to FIAMLA. FIAMLA prevents drugs money from being rinsed, from being dried, and from being spin-dried. But we have to follow the trail, and we have to beat the traffickers who are laundering dirty money. As I've stated earlier, are you surprised that payment is made in cryptocurrency? Can the trail be followed? Yes. Layering to obscure the origin will fail this time. Sharing of intelligence to uncover hidden connection and unravel the entire money laundering network is inevitable, as I say, because we have the will, and we will do it because we have friends, reliable friends. We have traditional partners who are willing to be together with us, because our fight is the fight, and we have to see to it that we deliver on promises made. But unlike the previous government, we are not looking into the eyes for certificate of merit to be issued. This is over. First, we have to know who the client is, and we have to understand the very meaning of diligence. The narco traffickers, as I've said, are still there, although some are on the run and operate under cover. But there is still, as I've said, an inherent fear. And I know of teachers who shake in their boots and turn a blind eye, yet they have to put their best endeavor to protect our kids. Today, it is sad when you see, when you hear, and I've seen young kids who are drug pushers and walking with bundles of paper money. Madam Speaker, as I've said, we are not going to retreat nor surrender, whether the war will be fought inland or at sea. The National Park Conservation Service, the Forestry Division, together with Custom, CCID, ADSU, National Coast Guard, MRA, have to act collectively to wage war on drug barons. And we have to be mindful of transshipment at sea. I have impressed upon ministers when I attended the meeting in Royal Island that we should have a strong regional plan for control and monitoring of transshipment of fish and drugs. Sometimes drugs are hidden in the bellies of fish. Monitoring, close surveillance, and use of helicopters, drones, and AI is becoming a common feature. Copernicus and other satellite agencies can say with precision the location of fish trawlers sometimes involved in drug trafficking, even if control, monitoring, and surveillance is switched off. The Canal of Mozambique, Madam Speaker, is known for all illegal transactions. Illegal, unreported, and unregulated transshipment of IUU and also of drugs. Madam Speaker, we have a vast exclusive economic zone. And we compute the total EZ of Comores, Mauritius, Madagascar, Réunion, and Seychelles. It's about 10% of the Indian Ocean. That is 7.3 million square kilometers. And it is not easy to exercise proper control, monitoring, and surveillance. But with the support of EU and French government, surveillance program to combat IUU and drug trafficking is becoming effective. Our National Coast Guard has to be reinforced, and the Quad and the French armory base in Réunion certainly are strong allies. And India tilts the balance with information that it relays to us. Madam Speaker, the sentences have to be harsh, and the specialized police force has to undergo proper training. But the police has to make sure that those who are on conditional bail do not run drug rings. Hardcore traffickers are likely to be on conditional bail. However, there are cases of alleged traffickers on bail. Madam Speaker, let me say a word in relation to whistleblowers. There are provisions in the bill for whistleblowers to speak without fear and prejudice, to blow the whistle and say where the trafficking is going on. And they need confidence. And we have to make sure that the information which is going to be relayed or conveyed or disclosed has to be disclosed to people who are reliable. As of now, there is still an element of mistrust. Who do I talk to? Can I trust the person? Is he or she reliable? This is the climate that we are going to introduce to dissipate fear, to inculcate values of standing up and say loud and clear, yes, we are not afraid to denounce those who are maiming and killing our children. And we need the courage. We need to muster the courage and say it without fear or prejudice. As I say, it is a bio-psychosocial problem. First and foremost, it's a societal problem. And there should be no alienation and no stigmatization. No child or any human being should be allowed to drift. And this problem, as I say, we need to address it with firmness and care. We have talked of psychological support, but we need to enlist the services of one and all. And in this battle, we all have to put our best endeavor, whether we are sitting in Government House, in Parliament, in a back street, or in Redwi. We all have to be on board. We have to wage war. The war has to be intensive, and there's no retreat when we have to face drug traffickers Madam Speaker. Let me end by talking on pharmacovigilance, the unit which is run by Mrs. Maula Bakas, Acting Director, Pharmaceutical Services. First of all, in relation to methadone. As Prime Minister has stated, methadone substitution therapy was officially introduced in Mauritius in November 2006 under the Labour government as part of a broader harm reduction strategy to address the country's high rate of opioid use and HIV transmission among people who inject drugs. After 18 years, there is a call to have a formal study, because whether we like it or not, the merits of this substitute drug far outweigh any other demerit. Today, it has, well, we know that it has a longer shelf life, but we have to make sure that it is used judiciously and we get the potency that the person who takes the drug has the potency which is relevant to the pharmacological relevance of this drug. Madam Speaker, we have traveled a long way. And today we have a government which has won the heart, the minds, and the soul of a nation. And we have to live up to the expectation. And this is precisely what we are doing. We will not retreat, whether we have to take difficult measures or measures which are popular. But we will take measures to redress and address forcefully biopsychosocial problems. As a nation, we want our people to be on the move and to walk without fear and prejudice. This is a battle which we are going to win, and win handsomely. Thank you very much, Madam.
Thank you. Honourable Member for Pamplemousse-Triolet.
Madame Speaker, pour commencer, je voudrais dire à cette vieille tchachi, dont je ne dirai pas le nom, pour des raisons évidentes, qui habite à Maïfel-Nagri, dans ce beau village de ma circonscription qui est Triolet, que nous ne vous avons pas oublié, que vos cris de cœur sont en passe d'être entendus et qu'on va faire ce qu'il faut pour extraire votre fils de 44 ans des griffes de ce démon qui est la drogue. Madame la Présidente, lorsque j'ai commencé mon combat contre la drogue, il y a deux choses qui s'est produites. La première, j'ai vu une avalanche de messages, de soutien, mais aussi d'informations. Et là, je me suis demandé pourquoi ces braves gens étaient disposés à venir me donner d'informations alors qu'il y avait la police. À eux, I want to tell them, à partir de maintenant, ils auront des structures qui auront les épaules bien plus larges que la mienne pour avancer leur doléance, et je serai continuellement à leur côté dans cette bataille contre la drogue. À mes amis qui m'avaient cautionné de ne pas m'aventurer trop vaillamment dans cette bataille contre la drogue, eux aussi, ils avaient raison. On le sait tous. Aller contre les barons de la drogue peut avoir des conséquences graves pour la personne qui mène le combat et pour sa famille. À eux, je leur dis, si on ne se décide pas à mener ce combat, on finira par perdre nos enfants à ce même problème qu'est la drogue. Alors, Madam Speaker, for me there is no debate about what drugs is doing to this beautiful country of mine. There is no doubt that drugs are being imported and also produced here. C'est évident that political will to curb this problem was non-existent until we came into power. Madam Speaker, we have the political will, and we will give ourselves everything that is needed to take our country back from the claws of death. I thank the Prime Minister for coming up with this bill within 6 months of taking control of the business of this country. Dear comrades, what haven't we debated, seen, and done in the past? We had the NATRESA that did its job in its time. We have had awareness programs. We have had rehabilitation programs. We have the Metadone distribution program that was brought in to address the HIV and drugs problem. We have drug repression measures. We realized that drug addicts had to be treated as victims, as sick people, in contrast to drug dealers who suck the lives of our families. We have ways and means, maybe not enough, for preventing drugs from coming in and going out. Yet, here we are. Some are even coining us the name of Zombie Island. Catastrophe is knocking at our doors. And I'm not afraid to say that this did not start on the 11th of November 2024. The beast has been allowed in very long back. Our people have got very simple questions. Why is it so hard to stop this problem of drugs? We heard that the other day when Mr. Sam Lotan was delivering a talk in Mont-Saint-Randé. A gentleman in the audience asked, why can't we apprehend a drug user and ask him, where did he buy his drugs from? And then we climb the chain to reach the big boss. I must say, Mr. Lotan gave him a very diplomatic reply. But we all know that had it been so easy to apprehend drug barons, we wouldn't be sitting here debating this bill. How many times haven't we heard about this refrain of, let's bring capital punishment for the drug dealers? Is it going to be the solution? I don't know. We have seen countries that have introduced or maintained capital punishment, but haven't seen a great decrease in the problem of drugs. Yet there are other countries who have had better success, like Singapore. I may not be the right person to dictate what we need to do about this. But for sure, I will fight for us to have the right people in our institutions to make the right recommendations so that we can all legislate on this matter. The National Agency for Drug Control is the first step of many that will come to create the appropriate structures and legal framework to help us combat the drug issue and other related problems. The issue of drugs is not only a problem of law and order. It is also a social issue, which in my opinion is the main issue, as it tears down families. It robs our very capable youth of their future and stigmatizes them for the rest of their lives. It is also a painful economic problem. It may sound foolish, but haven't we seen bus drivers putting at risk the lives of their passengers? Oh, just being immobilized in the middle of the road whilst they are in trance under the effect of drugs. Haven't we seen people zombified on their motorbikes in broad daylight? It seems that drugs is not something that addicts are hiding anymore, but it is in fact about enslavement, where they have no choice over what they are doing. Having no choice is not a choice. This is the pledge we have taken, to put choice back in the hands of the people, be it in terms of our economy, our health, or social tissue. That is why, Madam Speaker, it is urgent for us to have an agency such as the one we have proposed. We cannot be good in one department of our lives and yet so bad in another department. That is why it has become important for us to have a modern agency that will not sit as a two-faced bulldog, but will have the relevant powers to look at the problem with a holistic view, to take action in all directions that are required to address the problem. Yes, we have to provide the appropriate treatment to those who have fallen to the scourge of drugs. But we have to also lift up families affected by this. We have to give our business community an able working population rather than just giving them as only recourse to import people from Bangladesh, Nepal, or Madagascar. Madam Speaker, this law does not decriminalize any form of drug use or practice. It is not meant for that. It does better. It sets up the appropriate structures to consider this problem. The National Drug Control Commission will be chaired by the Prime Minister and will also comprise of the Deputy Prime Minister and many other ministers. All of them at the apex of our executive. If this does not show how important we consider our fight against drugs in Mauritius, I don't know what will. This bill also provides for the setting up of the Drug Control Board, and I have no doubt that the most able people will be appointed to lead this organization. The expectations of the population and all of us sitting in this August Assembly are very high. The two organizations being set up will have the very difficult task of finding a solution to the new forms of drugs, like fentanyl, which has crippled the world and is now infecting our society. This is a very serious problem. The more so as these new forms of drugs have immediately crippled us in three ways. Firstly, they are available at such low prices that even a child attending a primary school can acquire it with their pocket money, let alone a working adult wasting his hard-earned money on a fleeting high. Secondly, these new drugs have also meant that measures like legalizing recreational cannabis would be of no use, as the users of these synthetic drugs cannot use cannabis as a substitute. The reverse may be true, but the price at which synthetic drugs are available will not serve any purpose if we just legalize cannabis. From consultations I have had, I understand that there are also no synthetic substitutes for the new synthetic drugs, and doctors can only treat symptoms. They are treating headaches, nausea, and sleep disorders. Thirdly, the new synthetic drugs can cause sudden death, even for a first-time user. Nowadays, synthetic drugs abusers who are administered Metadone treatment are doubling up because they are also taking synthetic drugs. There you are, to the two bodies we are setting up. There lies your problem. The problem is a big one and is dynamic. This conclusion seems to echo that we don't have a solution for drug abusers. Indeed, we don't have a magic wand, and there lies the problem. Mais on ne va pas rester les bras croisés. S'il y a une chose et qu'une seule qu'on pourrait réaliser jusqu'à la fin de ce mandat, ce serait de redonner le sourire à ces familles perdues à la drogue. Pour conclure, Madame la Présidente, je sais que cette famille de Pointe-au-Piment, qui, ayant perdu un neveu à la drogue, nous écoute ce soir. Cette famille, unanimement, n'avait qu'une demande à nous formuler. celle de casser les reins des barons de la drogue. À eux, je voudrais leur dire, voici le premier pas. Madame la Présidente, j'ai dit.
Merci beaucoup. Ms. Baburam, this will be the last speech before we break. Huh?
Madam Speaker, it is with a deep sense of responsibility, but also with great hope that I rise today to contribute to the debate on the National Agency for Drug Control Bill. This bill, if implemented with sincerity and seriousness that it deserves, will be remembered as a pivotal moment in our nation's fight against one of the most corrosive plagues of our society: drug abuse and unchecked empire of illicit trafficking. Allow me first, Madam Speaker, to congratulate the Honourable Prime Minister and the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister for having kept their promises which they made during the elections. The establishment of a national drug agency is not just a political achievement. It is a moral and historical necessity. It shows that this government is not content to rule for today's applause, but is determined to leave a legacy, to build a safe and just future for our emerging generations. This is leadership. This is vision. Madam Speaker, a socialist government worthy of that name must strive for inclusiveness, justice, and equity. These are not just ideological pillars, they are the foundation of a healthy society. But let us not forget the recent past. The previous government, which paraded themselves as mouvement socialiste militant, did the exact opposite. Under their watch, the fabric of society frayed. Thousands of our children, yes, our children, were marginalized. I think we cannot forget and we cannot forgive them for having introduced the 5 credit, imposed this on our children, thus marginalizing thousands of children. They found themselves outside the educational system, a policy that punished the poor, the underprivileged, the voiceless. These children were denied their basic right to dream. And what happened, Madam Speaker? How do we expect these children, these young souls, to earn a living? They could not even rise up the social ladder. The doors of opportunity were slammed shut in their faces. The cost of living soared, and you will see that they created les circonstances propices pour le trafic de drogue. En fin de compte, ils ont créé une clientèle pour la drogue. Et politique de petit copinage flourished. Favoritism, nepotism, while ordinary citizens were struggling to feed their families. Crime rates went up. Our prisons, already creaking under pressure, became overpopulated. And as insecurity gripped our communities, a more insidious danger crept in: synthetic drugs. Il suffit aujourd'hui d'aller sur les réseaux sociaux pour voir des vidéos où les gens sont comme des zombies. And the zombie-like demeanor of those who fell prey to these poisons is something that we cannot ignore. Instead of showing compassion, many of those who use social media are sharing these videos. Are we to condemn these people, or are we to treat them, to give them the treatment, the medical treatment that they need? Young people stripped of hope, wandering like shadows, victims of a system that failed them, while drug barons grew richer, more powerful, and more untouchable. Madam Speaker, how can we call this a democracy? How could we call this a democracy? In a democracy, a government is supposed to make law for its people. But they made law, such as the 5 credits, to impose this on the children so that they could be marginalized and finally become clients for drug. A democracy is meant to be for the people, not for the profiteers. I must also raise a point that I've raised repeatedly in the past: our prison system. I cannot forget how our prisons became a passoire for drug lords. I say this with great concern, not as a mere political rhetoric. I've said it before the press in the past. I've said it before the Commission of Inquiry on Drugs. I saw it myself when I visited prisons while I was at the National Preventive Mechanism Division of the Human Rights Commission. And yet, nothing changed. The same livreur de poissons seen in prisons was also seen on the Watershed, which, let us not forget, sank in deeply suspicious circumstances. Are we to keep ignoring such coincidences? And what about the tragic, unexplained death of a police constable arrested with drugs at the airport, found dead at the Mocha Detention Center? I would like at this stage to quote what late Mr. Lassemillante, who was the deputy chairperson of that division, the National Preventive Mechanism Division, said in his report. It was on 31st October 2016. These are extracts. The detainee was posted in cell number 14 where the CCTV camera did not work. During my visit, it was reported that the detainee hanged himself by using a towel attached to a tap situated at 3 feet above ground level. This death is suspect. It is difficult for a man of medium height to hang himself with an object situated at merely 3 feet from ground level. We noted that in some cells of the detention center, the CCTV camera system was working. Yet, the accused in an important drugs importation case is detained in one of the cells which cannot be supervised by the CCTV camera, end of quote. This is not just suspicious, this is outrageous. How many more lives must be lost? How many more parents must watch helplessly as their children fall into addiction while those profiting from it dine in luxury? This is why, Madam Speaker, this bill is more than just a legal framework. It is a moral reckoning. I truly trust that this National Agency for Drug Control will be the institution we need to attack this scourge from its roots. We cannot afford to leave the future of our youth in the hands of mafias, cartels, or corrupt networks. Let us empower this agency to act independently without fear or favor. Let it operate free from political interference. Let it have the resources and the mandate to break down the criminal empires that have long held this country hostage. Because today, Madam Speaker, we have something rare and powerful. We have hope. Hope for a society where no child is left behind. Hope for a future where prisons are not schools of crime, but institutions of reform. Hope for a nation where drug dealers are in jail and not in government contracts. Hope for a Mauritius that belongs to its people again. Let us not squander this opportunity. Let us pass this bill with the seriousness and the unity it deserves. Let history record that we stood on the right side, that when the tide turned, we chose justice, we chose life, we chose our children. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honourable members, I suspend the sitting for 1 hour.